Good afternoon, council members. Just to keep you in the loop as to why we haven't started yet, it's because I'm retired from an airline and we're always late. Actually, they're working to, don't go there, Kelly. They're working to reload the PowerPoint, and the word I get is that they're almost done, and then we can start. Is that correct, Janice?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, party on. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. How about that? I did that without a gavel. I just you got to be creative in this job. We will, can we present the roll call? So everyone to check in. And just to get ready, Brian Tisdale, you'll be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance after we...
You might want to mention to all the new folks how they check in or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with the presentation, all the voting will be done on your screen in front of you. And it looks like we're still waiting on Calamasa, Canyon Lake, City of Menifee, City of Temecula, City of Beaumont. Not sure who's here and who's not.
You see the power on the right? Oh, good.
All right, that's enough. 20 are here. Is that a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Councilmember Brian Tisdale.
Please join me as we honor our nation's flag. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United So at this time, I'd like to welcome new executive committee members. I only have Brandon Plott.
PowerPoint should be coming up.
Oh, okay, all right. We're going to get a PowerPoint to tell us who's here. Who's new? Sorry, Brandon. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, so some of them are here in different positions now.
They're all here except for Joe.
And Joe's not here. Brandon's here. So we've got a new county supervisor, Karen Spiegel, Jeff Hewitt, also Mike Law from Beaumont, Jim Hyatt, Calamasa, Michael Goodland. Are you new or you just came back? Came back. Jason Scott from Corona. Joe's not here. And Matt Leesmeyer from Menifee. Welcome. And we'll move on to public comment. And Janice, do we have any requests to speak under public comment?
No, sir, I have no requests.
All right, great. Then the next item on the agenda will be minutes, approve the minutes from our December 3rd, 2018 meeting. And someone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes, or if you have suggested changes to the minutes, please let me know. All right, City of Temecula is not here, Janice, right?
No.
Correct, I'll mark her out in the system.
Okay, so we have 14 yeses, 0 noes, and 7 abstentions to approve those minutes. We'll move down to consent calendar. We have, looks like items 6A and B are action items. C, D, E, F, and G are information items. I'll take them all at once. That's what Janice has put up there, so that's what we're doing. And get a motion for the consent calendar. Got a motion and a second. Please register your votes on the screen in front of you. All right, that motion is approved with 20 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 1 abstention. That brings us down to reports and discussion. Item 7A, report from League of Cities and Aaron Sassy. Happy New Year, Aaron.
Happy New Year. It's nice to see all of you. I feel like it's been a while.
It's a good-looking group, isn't it?
Amazing, yeah. Smiling faces, you're all excited to be here. I'm guessing everybody had good holidays, hoping so at least. Aaron Sassy with the League of California Cities, thank you for having me here today. We're back up and running. Today the governor was officially sworn in, so definitely going to be a change for us for the next couple of years. We'll see what's in store for that. The budget will be released this Thursday, likely at 10 a.m., so I know that once we get that information, we'll get it all out to you as soon as we can, likely later in the day by the time we can do all the analysis of it. I don't really have any insider knowledge on what's going to be in it at this point, so we'll just have to stay tuned. A couple items that I do want to bring to your attention. I know these are things that I've talked about in the past. Some legislation that we are going to be pursuing again this year, especially in light of having a new governor, is legislation that would clean up. If you remember when in 2011, when the 4 new cities lost their funding, we also lost funding for inhabited annexations. So several of our cities also lost some funding, not quite to the level of those new cities, but we've not been able to get that policy restored. So at this point, it's really difficult for there to ever be a new city in the state. And it's something we've tried to fix every year. We tried it as a package, we tried it separately, we got the new funding restored for our cities, but this annexation piece is still outstanding. So the cities of Temecula and Riverside were really hurt the most in our area. So I know that we're going to be coming back to all of you looking for some support because we do think that this governor might be open to fixing this loophole. So more to come on that. Another item I know I've talked about is the Bureau of Cannabis Control has released some regulations that do require cities to offer deliveries. We were opposed to that. We tried to get them to remove that. They did not. So at this point where we stand is that the Office of Administrative Law is going to be issuing a decision on whether or not they think they can do that. We think that we'll be hearing that on that decision any day now, but they have until January 16th. So in the next couple of weeks, we should know where that stands and then what our next steps will be. Also, on the cannabis front, we will be giving out a survey to all of our cities. And it's really something that we're trying to get some information on, gather data on what your cities are doing. So when I send that out, if you could please make sure that somebody responds to that, it would be really helpful for us to just, there's a lot of questions in it, but it's really helpful for us to have this data. So when people ask us what various cities are doing, we have the information to be able to respond. A couple other items, we have on January 14th, our next division meeting, that's next Monday. The city of Eastvale is hosting it, and it sounds like it's going to be a really fun event. We're doing a little bit different. We're doing dinner and networking on the front end because they are doing a taste of Eastvale, and then we'll have our meeting, and Sheriff-elect Bianco is our speaker. Also, we have on February 22nd, we're doing our regional new elected training. Every other year, this is something our division does where we bring in WRCOG, CVAG, RCTC, LAFCO, and really just try to educate all of our new elected officials, but it doesn't just have to be the new elected officials on what the various organizations are, what the league is, just to be able to be an information source. So February 22nd is when that's taking place. And then also, I know we always have our golf tournament on the same day in October, and unfortunately, we had to move the date this year. So I want to get it all on your radars now. We're trying September 13th, it's a Friday, so definitely a different day for us, but September 13th, I encourage you to all come out, it's a fun day. With that, just happy to be here, thank you for having me, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions for Aaron? All right, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to get a report from South Coast AQMD. Good afternoon, Derek.
Good afternoon, Chairman and COG members. My name is Derek Alatorre. I'm Deputy Executive Officer for the South Coast Air Quality Management District in the Legislative Public Affairs and Media Division. As most of you know, we are the local air pollution control agency for all of Orange County, the urban portions of Riverside, San Bernardino, and Los Angeles counties. Over 11,000 square miles, over 17 million people, and that's over 43% of our state's population. We have over 12 million vehicles on the road in our region. Our primary mission is to control pollution from stationary sources. There are emission standards for mobile sources, but that is primarily on the hands of the California Air Resources Board and the US EPA. AQMD is still required to put together what we call an air quality management plan. That's our roadmap to clean air, and that's helping us get to our attainment standards that we are required to meet. The federal government has designated us as extreme non-attainment for ozone. We have 2 dates that we have to come into compliance, 2023 and 2031. The primary source of that problem is coming from NOx, from our NOx issues. NOx is a precursor to ozone, and that is the primary source of that is coming from mobile sources, of which we don't have any regulatory authority over, but yet we have to meet these federal standards. Over 80% of that, of our problem is coming from the mobile sources. We have 2 of the largest container ports in our region, LA and Long Beach, which bring in over 40% of the goods coming in from overseas. The Goods movement is obviously a very strong economic engine for this region, but it's also a greatest source of air pollution. So having to meet these mandates that the federal government has established for our region, we looked at a number of different avenues on how to get there. Being that we don't have regulatory authority over mobile sources, the only way we're going to be able to address that problem is going on the incentive route. So we're going to be introducing a bill in Sacramento this legislative session for an increase in sales tax. I'm sure some of you already heard about that. But this funding, if it does pass, will go to clean up the mobile source sector. This bill that we're going to have is only going to give us authorization to put a ballot measure on the ballot, whether it be from our board or whether it be by voter initiative. The 2016 AQMP calls for over $1 billion of incentive funding to deploy clean technology and accelerate the turnover of dirty, heavy-duty vehicles and equipment. The regulations are not going to be there for us. The federal government's not going to do their job, but yet we are mandated to meet their attainment standards. This proposal would eliminate severe and unhealthy air pollution in the South Coast. We're looking at we got authorization for a full cent, but we're probably going to seek more like a half a cent sales tax increase. By meeting those deadlines for the federal government, meeting those mandates, we're going to avoid getting cut off from billions of dollars of federal highway transportation dollars for this region. They could come in and create stricter requirements for business, but also they'll take over the air quality management of this region, impose draconian measures here in our area. This measure will reduce severe health impacts, asthma, bronchitis, premature death, etc. This measure will provide a preference for projects in this district. So that means that if there's equipment being used, as long as it's manufactured and assembled in this region, they will have a preference for getting the funding. There will be a sales tax sunset, which a lot of folks are looking at. The AQMP will help us provide and ensure the funding is spent effectively. There will be oversight not only by our board, but we'll also be reporting to the state legislature. This is a local control issue. The voters should have the opportunity to say whether they want to be taxed more for clean air. We're going to be conducting a survey. Sacramento, the legislators have asked for us to conduct a survey. We've conducted a preliminary survey late last year. The results were positive. But now we're going to go into more in depth on actual sales tax increase. So with that, I'll take any questions you have, but thank you very much for letting me come up and talk to you about this proposal.
All right. Thank you, Derek. I think you have a question from Rupa Valley.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Delatorre, what is the sunset?
So the sunset will be, we're looking at 2050.
And what was the reasoning for the increase in sales tax?
So because we don't have regulatory authority over mobile sources, we have very limited, that's more on public fleets. On the private fleet side, there's no way for us to, there's no stick, so we have to give them a carrot, being the incentives to turn over their equipment sooner rather than later.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Moreno Valley. Oops, sorry. I turned you off.
Hello? Okay. Councilwoman Carla Thornton, I just had a comment. While this is a receive and file item, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this concept in a forum with other local leaders. Sales tax measures are predominantly local initiatives where voters of individual cities are asked to raise money to support services in their own communities, such as police and fire. I believe that a regional air quality sales tax is consistent with this approach. The other essential ingredients to voter support for local sales taxes is that funds are completely subject to local control. Where voters have passed sales tax measures, they appropriately hold their respective city councils accountable accountable for how these funds are spent. A regional air quality sales tax would not provide local control and accountability to our residents. In our area, we benefit from Measure A, which funds regional transportation projects. But there are several important distinctions between Measure A and a proposed regional tax for air quality. Measure A is a local measure that serves Riverside County residents. Our colleagues who serve on the RCTC directly oversee spending. Because South Coast AQMD comprises 4 counties, more than 160 cities, and serves nearly 17 million residents, it cannot be considered as a local agency that is easily accessible to our local residents. Measure A is used often in combination with other local dollars to fund critical and very tangible improvements to enhance mobility in our region. I hope that my colleagues here today share Moreno Valley's concerns that a regional air quality tax is not a good fit for Riverside County because it could ultimately limit the ability of local cities to consider sales tax measures to deal with rising costs. We all need the flexibility and capacity to present our constituents with options to raise revenue if needed, to fix our roads, maintain public safety, and serve our residents.
Thank you very much. If I can just answer that.
Your presentation was for receive and file.
Okay.
And we won't be voting on this, so the members here are not making a decision about going forward on the sales tax or not. Did you want further input on that? No.
Okay.
Before you leave, Ben, did you want to chime in since you're the AQMD rep?
Sure. Being that I do serve on AQMD, and I want to thank my colleagues. One of my announcements in my presentation today is I was actually sworn in at the last meeting for another 4 years, so thank you again for all the cities that supported me to do that. As far as this particular item, this item came out of the legislative committee, which I do not serve on. That's one of the committees I'm not on, thankfully, because that would be one more Friday I have to be there at AQMD. But this is something that does come back to the AQMP, as Derek alluded to. That AQMP, the mitigation plan from 2016, did have a gaping financial hole that we're trying to find different ways to fill. And one of the key parts of that plan was that our board would take all the different opportunities to potentially find money and find sources. And then I have to say that the board has done a pretty good job already of finding a lot of the money that we need, not enough. So this legislative committee has decided to take this action, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see if the legislature even gives us the authority to then ask the voters. But I do understand the concerns from Moreno Valley, and I have like concerns in my own city where we just passed our own sales tax measure. How many pennies can someone put up with when they're going to buy their gas or their burger or whatever it is? So it is a difficult decision, and we'll see where this goes. But hope to see what comes of this. And thank you, Derek, for coming out to give us this presentation. I know we had a lot of questions here, and I had colleagues that were asking me, so I'm glad you can come out here and take some of the arrows for me.
Sure.
All right, are there any other questions or comments before we release Derek? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rick Bishop, hopefully you're not asking for more money.
No, I'm so thrilled that I'm not. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With so many new members and some old faces coming back to us, we thought that this first meeting of the new year would be a good opportunity to provide an overview on WRCOG and our agency activity. So I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. You also do have a PowerPoint, but hopefully this will be of real benefit to especially our new members and a good refresher for some of you that have been with us for a while. So Barbara, move to the next slide. So this is the WRCOG subregion, 18 cities, the unincorporated county of Riverside. We're a little unusual as a council of governments in that we also have representation from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. That's not something that's common with councils of governments. We also have the 2 water districts, which is very uncommon as councils of governments are concerned, and also have as an ex officio member the Riverside County Superintendent of Schools. But this is kind of how we as staff and elected officials look at our subregion, but in reality, This is really where we are. We're in a Southern California area that has over 20 million people. We are, whether we like it or not, intricately connected to folks in LA County, San Bernardino County, even San Diego County and Orange County. And the one thing that you notice or don't notice on this particular photograph are boundaries. There's no city boundaries, there's no county boundaries, there's no water district boundaries. This is really what we deal with when we start taking a look at the issues that you deal with as an individual jurisdiction or as a regional agency. So we also know that Western Riverside County remains one of the fastest growing areas in California and the country. Last I looked, I think we're second or third fastest growing area in the United States. And the growth is occurring everywhere. And the reason I like this slide is you sort of take a look at cities like Riverside, which many people think might be built out. Well, from a percentage standpoint, it doesn't look like it's growing that much, but it actually is the fastest growing city in Western Riverside County. So it's important to note that we have cities that are in all stages of development and communities that are in all stages of evolution, and yet they face the same common problems that are really centered around how to address the future growth that they're going to be taking on. So these issues that you deal with as local jurisdictions that pertain to growth, which include traffic and air quality, water, energy, housing, and others, they are not constrained by your local jurisdictional boundaries. And if you solve a problem, for example, in the transportation realm in your city, it doesn't mean a whole lot if the problem also isn't equally being addressed in the cities that are next to you, because we all know that people drive across city boundaries. And that's why you hear the term sheds applied to a lot of these words. We hear of commute sheds and air sheds and water sheds and housing sheds. And so sometimes it's important to take a look at issues not just as they pertain to your local individual jurisdictional boundaries, but at a larger geographic level and a larger geographic context. And so that's, I think, primarily why councils of governments and sub-regional organizations were formed, was to provide that larger geographic perspective, to bring local governments together in a way where they can communicate with each other and find solutions that impact in a positive manner larger areas. So here's an idea of, or here's a graphic of the many sub-regional organizations that are just within Southern California under the SCAG umbrella. There's 15 or 16 of them. Some of them you may have heard of, some maybe not, but you can see that they are collections of local jurisdictions. So kind of at the most basic level, what are councils of governments? Well, they're known by many different names: regional councils, regional commissions, planning commissions. They're basically coordinating entities, and then if given power by their members, they also do provide some regional governance on specific programs. They are formed through joint powers agreements or joint powers authorities, which means that the members voluntarily prescribed to be part of the organizations, and they also then become the guiding agents of the organization. Just in case you're on Jeopardy, and one of the categories is COGS. COGS for 100. The first known COG was in the Atlanta regional metro area, formed in 1947. I did a little bit of research. I don't know if the number is accurate, but it's estimated that there are now more than 400 COGs throughout the country. But maybe more interestingly is if you take a look at the nearly 40,000 local general purpose governments in the country, more than 35,000 are served by these sub-regional planning organizations such as COG. So they don't get a lot of press and publicity, but they really are a mainstay for local governments throughout the country. So the next question you might ask is, how do COGs compare to other regional agencies? And for those of you that are newly elected, you're going to quickly get into the acronym world of all the regional agencies that exist, the RCTC and the RCA and the RCHCA and RTA and so on and so forth. And there are many regional agencies, and typically the regional agencies tend to be single purpose or special purpose agencies. In other words, they are formed to do one thing. And so we see a lot of those in Western Riverside County, in fact, throughout California. RCTC deals with our half-cent sales tax in California, and we all know that they're one of the best in the state. RTA is our transit agency. We have a conservation authority. We have our water districts, and you can see they all do things that are singularly focused for the most part. The major difference that I see with councils of governments is that they are not singularly focused. Their bylaws and their governing documents are purposely vague, which I used to find that very disconcerting when I first got here, to not have specific assignments. But what I found over time is that I think it's really appropriate and timely for local jurisdictions to have a regional agency where ideas can be vetted, on how to better govern, on how to be more cost-effective in having strength in numbers in local jurisdictions as they move forward. And so this kind of undefined, ambiguous nature of what defines or does not define a council of governments, I really think, is to their and to your advantage. And you'll see that in the number of programs and assignments that we take on. So I think really the difference between a COG and the single purpose entities is we ask ourselves the question, what do members want to achieve, not necessarily what we have to do. And as you find local government changing and the climate of the regional governance and the state level and federal levels, it really is appropriate and I think of value to have a forum where you can ask those questions and collectively figure out better ways to govern. So this flexibility or this ambiguity, no matter what you want to call it, has really resulted in a wide range of activities that councils of governments, not just WRCOG, have taken on over time. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you kind of get the idea. Now, WRCOG specifically, this is the executive committee, for the most part our day-to-day governing board. This is our city council or our board of supervisors. It's kind of blown up on steroids, as you can tell, with the large number of members here of 25 representatives. The General Assembly is all of the elected officials in Western Riverside County, and they meet once a year at our General Assembly to approve the budget, name officers, and then they would also approve any bylaws or not bylaws, but JPA amendments. But really what makes us, I think, role in an appropriate manner to serve our member jurisdictions is really the number of committees that we have in place, and the green boxes in particular. And one of the things that we've strived really hard to do is to make sure that by the time a recommendation gets to you as the elected officials and the governing body of WRCOG is that those recommendations have been vetted and proposed by our own staff in key departments. And so you can see the green committees there are all staff level committees. They're a technical advisory committee, which is comprised of all the city managers, the general managers of the water districts, the superintendent of schools, Morongo, and then each of your jurisdictions has your public works director on a committee, your planning director on a committee, your finance directors, so on and so forth. So we haven't even begun to put all of the subcommittees that are on here, but I think you get the idea that we work really hard to make sure that your staffs are tuned into what we're doing, to make sure that their ideas are the ones that are moving forward, and that it creates a very well-informed elected body as we move decisions forward. So what guides our activities? We've also been very purposeful in not just taking on anything and everything that comes our way, because a lot of ideas really don't fit appropriately within the geography of WRCOG. They're better done at other levels or perhaps by other agencies. We've had a number of visioning sessions over time with our elected officials, with our city managers and our department heads. And basically for about the last 5 or 6 years now, the 6 bulleted items are the areas that you have all said are most appropriate for potential involvement by WRCOG. And so those are the areas that we look at when we do receive any new ideas that come from you or your staffs. The very first thing we do is we check it against these boxes here and see if there's a relationship. After that, we then put the ideas and the suggestions through a filtering process, and here's some of the questions we ask ourselves. Is it truly a multi-jurisdictional issue? Is there potential to make a difference? And the bottom line is there bang for the buck, and is it something that nobody else is doing? And so we're very careful when we take on and examine new ideas. First and foremost, let's make sure that we're not duplicating work that's already being done. Let's make sure that if we are going to move ahead, that we have the resources and the expertise to accomplish something, and make sure in the end that it's something that is going to be valuable to a number of jurisdictions, not one, so on and so forth. So we think that this filtering process, along with the 6 strategic goal areas, makes for a very fluid process and a deliberative process for us to come to agreement as to what kinds of activities are appropriate to be explored in this venue, and quite frankly, which are not. So with that, I wanted to run through some of the programs that we've have in place for several years. I think you're familiar with the TUMF program. It's we still think the largest multi-jurisdictional transportation program of its kind in the country, nearly $4 billion in improvements. In the last year, we are seeing, not a full rebound, but certainly an improvement with the economy. We collected more last year than we have since 2007, $54 million. We've also been able to contribute and seen a number of pretty large-scale projects that have broken ground and had ribbon cuttings for, as you can see, Clinton Keith Road Extension, Paris Boulevard. We're working on an online TUMF tool that makes it easier for folks to understand processes, facilities. As you know, we are in the process of taking on responsibility for TUMF fee collections for most of the agencies. We think that's a real service and value added to you as we move forward in the spring. Also in our transportation department, we have just completed a regional active transportation plan, which lays out over 500 new miles of new active transportation infrastructure that we'll be seeking funding for in the future. We also held a transportation summit this year discussing new transportation technologies and best practices. We're going to do another one of these events this spring. Our Future of Cities event is going to focus largely on autonomous vehicles, and so we're excited to see what that future brings to us and to you as local jurisdictional leaders. You did receive a very eye-opening presentation on the automation of the warehousing industry and jobs in general, and that was presented from professors from the University of Redlands, and if you recall, they estimated or they projected that the Inland Empire was among the 5 most vulnerable areas to losing jobs to automation in the country, and so that's very eye-opening, and we want to explore that more, and we probably will do so in our Future Cities Conference. Our solid waste recycling programs, these are programs where you, local jurisdictions, receive small amounts of money to do things along the lines of promoting used oil recycling. It's really not enough for you to do, and so you pool the resources provided to WRCOG, and we're able to staff up a much more comprehensive effort, and that continues to be very successful, and I think our program is really highly regarded at the state level. Our PACE programs have been in place since 2011. This is the programs that, as WRCOG is the bond issuer, we provide the financing for residents and business owners to make energy efficient, renewable energy, and water conservation improvements to their homes or businesses. Our program is still the largest in the country. It started here in the Western Riverside region. We went statewide in 2014. Overall, our program is available to 373 jurisdictions in the state of California, and we just have completed our 90,000th project statewide and have funded over $2 billion in improvements. And we're kind of going back in time. Remember, the reason that we decided to do this is that we thought it would be a great mechanism for creating jobs for local contractors, improving our older housing stock and making it more appealing to the future home buyers in Western Riverside County, and of course for those residents that live in the buildings or own the commercial buildings. It saves water and energy and saves utility bills. So we think that the program with additional controls that have been put in place over time is better than ever and is working. Our energy partnership is something that came out of direction from the executive committee a few years ago to work more closely with Southern California Edison and Southern California gas companies to help local jurisdictions take the lead in being an example for energy savings. And so we created the Western Riverside Energy Partnership. You can see some of the results there. We've had very successful promotional events, meeting with the community. One of the most successful ones, or the ones that the residents like the most, is our annual holiday LED exchange for lights, and that's been very successful over the year. I wanted to put shout out to the cities of Corona and Murrieta. They received Cool Planet Awards for their work in implementing energy projects and achieving some pretty significant energy savings goals. So the whole REP program is intended to have local jurisdictions lead by example and getting their residents to then find interest in saving energy. Our Habitat Conservation Agency, this is the Riverside County Habitat Conservation Agency. This is a JPA that consists of 11 of our jurisdictions. We manage 40,000 acres of Stevens kangaroo rat habitat. And with the leadership, largely I'm looking at Ben Benoit over there and a few others to bring the RCHCA over to WRCOG. That consolidation occurred in full this last year. It provides a lot of savings to the agency itself. And we have a few goals for 2019, and that is to strengthen our relationships with state and federal elected officials and agencies. Our main goal is to be able to tell our story and demonstrate that this plan has actually worked, that this species is recovered, and we'd like to see it downlisted, so that's one of our goals for the year. We're also interested, based on direction from our board, in providing public access on some of these lands. That's been one of the big problems with conservation plans, is that you conserve the lands, but then they're not open to the public, and we think that that's a disservice to the public, and we think that there's a lot that can come in increasing understanding of habitat conservation by opening these lands up, and so we're moving on that. And then we're also exploring some additional creative ways to continue to fund long-term management of these lands. So we're excited to have the Conservation Agency as part of WRCOG, and we're hoping to make some strides forward in these areas in this next year. One new program that we initiated this year is grant writing assistance, and we've heard over and over, and we've experienced this ourselves, and that is we typically have a very poor track record in applying for and receiving grants. And so this year we pooled some of our carryover funds, and we hired a bench of consultants, a great idea from Chris Gray, our Director of Transportation, and we've made this bench of consultants available to our local jurisdictions to help them in grant writing and grant applications, and the results are right in front of you. We've spent $125,000 so far for grant writing assistance for our member agencies, and we received $13 million in return so far, so that's a more than 100-to-1 return on our investment, so it seems to be a program that is working, and we'll look to find ways to continue to move that along in the future. Skip to the next slide. Okay, our Beyond Framework Fund, this is our program where we have provided a little over $4 million to our member jurisdictions to implement more than 80 projects that actually all align with the various economic development, education, health, and energy goals that our elected officials have stated should be at the forefront of our activity. So all of you have one or two really cool projects that you've put in place, whether it's from urban gardens to website designs to economic development efforts. It's tended to be a really successful program, one that we're proud of and one that we're hoping that we can continue in the future as well. Our fellowship program is also an outgrowth of our carryover funds. This comes from suggestions from our city managers a few years ago that said that they were very concerned about the brain drain that was occurring here in Western Riverside County, and how we've got, thousands of students in our universities, and yet very few of them land, especially jobs in local jurisdictions. And so we created a dedicated fellowship program that we funded over 3 years. And have placed fellows in each of your agencies, and the good news is that our overall goal is that none of these fellows actually complete their coursework, but that they get hired by the agency. So we've seen that has been something that has been very successful so far, and we're looking to continue that program as well. Captivate 2.0, this was a climate action plan that we prepared with a Caltrans grant a few years ago. It was basically led by all of your planning directors, and the idea there was to identify measures that local jurisdictions could use to demonstrate compliance with state laws as it pertains to AB 32 and greenhouse gas emissions. And so the whole idea was, how can we capture and identify and quantify things that are already being done, or that if they are going to be done, there are things that are reasonable, and then get credit for it rather than just waiting for state regulations to come down telling us what we must do. And so that's been a successful effort, and we were awarded a grant this year to continue and update those activities, and so we'll be working on that with our member jurisdictions this year. We just completed an experience feasibility study. This is the idea for an experiential sustainability and innovation center. We conducted a feasibility analysis. The feasibility analysis showed that the experience would be feasible. I'm trying to think of how many times I say feasible in one presentation, that it would be beneficial to the subregion. You all selected at the last meeting a site in Riverside as the preferred host site, and so we're now working with the city of Riverside to evolve that concept further, so something that we're real excited about and have had a lot of interest in. Our regional streetlight program is underway. This is 11 of our cities that we've worked with to purchase 48,000 streetlights from Southern California Edison. When you own the streetlights, there's big savings that come with that, so we're going to help them purchase the streetlights. The streetlights will then get converted to LED. That process is just starting up this month, and we've projected a net savings to the jurisdictions that are participating in the program of $60 million over 20 years. And that's not even to mention the fact that once you own the poles, there are additional revenue generating opportunities that come along with that. So this is a program that we are really excited about. You can see the before and after pictures. I mean, it's not just savings, but it's really going to create a different nighttime sky environment, we think, in Western Riverside County, and one that I personally think is going to increase property values as we kind of get out from the aquarium look that we have at nighttime to have something that looks more realistic. It's also really good from a public safety standpoint because the colors are much more real than what we see in the examples on the left. Community choice aggregation, this is the program that 7 of our member jurisdictions are part of. The idea is to allow jurisdictions to purchase energy directly and then provide it to their constituents. The whole idea behind this is that it provides local control, it provides savings, can provide a greener energy mix, and serve as an economic advantage. So we have formed the JPA with 7 of our jurisdictions, have been meeting since August. We've submitted our implementation plan to the CPUC. We're projecting a minimum of 2% savings on the utility bill, up to 3%. We'll see how that works out, and our target is to be able to provide service to those 7 member jurisdictions in April of 2020. So we'll keep you informed on that as we move ahead. We also have been working on a regional stormwater mitigation program. Again, this is something where local developments that move forward are required to comply with stormwater requirements from one of 2 regional water control districts, whether it's in San Diego or Santa Ana. And we, in talking with Riverside County Flood, kind of jointly came up with the idea that, you know, if we had a regional program, it might make it easier on our development community rather than them having to satisfy requirements on site, that maybe they could, in some cases, choose to pay fees into a bank, and there could be some regional mitigation. So we continue to work with Riverside County Flood and our member jurisdictions to see if that is something that we can pursue, as well as working with, at this point in time, the San Diego Water Quality Control Board. We need to get a plan to them for them to comment on, but we're pretty excited about the prospects there, that we think that that will eliminate some hurdles for our development community in moving forward and hopefully save them some money as well. As you all know, we also host a number of conferences and events. We're probably best known for the annual General Assembly, and we've had a number of great speakers over time. I mentioned earlier our Future of Cities Conference. We do continue to work with Eastern and Western municipal water districts to hold, I think, bi-monthly water task force series meetings where we get updates from water experts up and down the state on a very important issue, obviously, to our future development. And then we also conduct other workshops, as I mentioned, the one on transportation, the one on automation, and some bus tours as we go. As we continue to work on finding ways to communicate better with the public and with you, one of the things that we're really excited about is our COGcasts. We introduced these a month or 2 ago. 20-minute long episodes or so. We think it's a real helpful resource for you, for your staff, and for your constituents. The idea is to basically highlight anything, and we'll talk to anybody that is making an impact on projects of issues that we think are of importance to Western Riverside County. So far, we've been trying to work the bugs out, so we've been focusing just on WRCOG programs. That's why you can see all the ones about WRCOG and TUMF and RATS and WC, but we're very quickly getting ready to forge out and start working with other agencies and hopefully your cities to talk about things that are going on in your local jurisdiction. So that's just another way that we're excited to reach out to our members. So kind of in a nutshell, what is working for us, we think, when we kind of look back on all this? Well, first and foremost, it's you. We can't do anything without strong elected official leadership and guidance. And so, you know, we and all the staff, we thank you immensely for the time that you put in to the agencies and the ideas that you have. Secondly, as I mentioned, it's important not to duplicate existing work, but to find niches that serve your interests. And so if we're certainly not in the business of duplicating work, and so we're trying to be very careful to not do that. Staying true to our mission is also obviously very important. We've always been adamant about respecting local control. You'll never see us weigh in on land use measures, land use decisions, anything of that nature, but our job is to provide regional perspective to you and how we think you might be able to find some cost efficiencies in working together on programs. The fourth one is obvious. I mean, we can't get new assignments unless we're demonstrating that we're excellent in the ones that we're already undertaking. The fifth bullet is something I mentioned earlier. We want to be a sounding board. We want this to be a place where new ideas can come to the table. Also, we're embracing our ambiguity. And then, as you also saw, last but not least, we want to be staff passengered and not driven. So I met today with staff. This was our first staff meeting today, and I thought, really our goal for 2019 at the staff level, and I would also kind of propose this as a challenge to you, is it all starts with 4 words for us, and that's I have an idea. So if you have an idea on something you think that might be appropriate for the level of geography that WRCOG operates in, we want to hear about it, and we'll put it through our processes, we'll put it through our filters, and then we'll see if it has legs and go from there. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to provide this quick primer, and to all the executive committee members. I hope that was somewhat helpful, and we'd be happy to meet with any of you and talk about anything and everything we do in more detail.
Thank you, Rick. That was very thorough. I don't know if I'd say in a nutshell, but certainly, yeah. So moving on, George Johnson is not here today. He had to attend another event, so we'll move past that. Are there any reports from any representatives that attend SCAG meetings? Seeing none, we got a report already from Ben Benoit. We'll move on to Brian Tisdale. Do you have anything to add, CalCog? All right. And I don't know if I. One thing. Okay, good. And now for a report from our executive director, Rick Bishop.
I was going to start that presentation over again, but maybe not now. No, I just wanted to announce one thing. We have next slide, we have a new staff member for WRCOG. This is Elise Masters, Tyler Masters and his wife, Martha. Just brought Elise into the world. When was that, Tyler? November 25th, and he looks really tired too right now. So Elise is with us, and so we already have her training in our fellowship program, and we'll see where that goes. So we just wanted to let you all know we're just welcoming Elise to the family.
In that right-hand picture, looks like she's saluting. Are you steering her towards military? Not yet.
She's steering me.
She's steering you, of course. Congratulations. Thank you, Rick. That was a nice personal touch. Items for future agendas from anyone? Recommendations? Seeing none? General announcements from members? Don't? All right. Our next meeting will be on Monday, February 4th, right here, 2 p.m. And with that, we are adjourned.